Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. I'm absolutely buzzing to be joined by Callum, who is the director and co-founder of Equinimity Search. Callum and I have been in communication for a couple of years or so now, and I went back on his podcast, Humble Billings, back in the day. We won't talk about what happened there, will we, Callum?
Kind if you want, mate.
No, it's just things happened in it, but no, it was really, really good to meet you in person there. And obviously we saw each other at the Recruitment Agency Expo, and as soon as I set this podcast up, I thought Callum has to come on because I think the first time we done the podcast, it was a struggle to keep within the hour, and then when we done a live stream, again that was a bit of a struggle. So hopefully we'll stay within the hour sort of time frame. But how's everything going anyway, Callum?
Yeah, good, mate. Just for context, just so people know, basically, I filmed the podcast with Charles. It was on an SD card, put it on my desk, ready to be edited, and then the cleaner binned it. So it's still a touchy subject for myself and obviously for Charles.
Yeah.
But yeah, them days I enjoyed doing the podcast. Obviously, that was through my previous employer. But yeah, it was good. I think, probably going off the first question, which you're going to ask me, I think that will be a big starting point for, building a brand. But yeah, you asked me how I am, mate, living the dream, all good on my end. Yeah, glad to be here, mate. How are you?
Yeah, no, really excited, mate. And I was actually saying this morning, I went for a coffee with my wife and the puppy, and she was like, "Have you got in your podcast today?" Because I'm always telling her about like what guests I've got.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I've got Callum." She was like, "Oh, Callum from Manchester, the one that got Jordan the job, my brother." And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, that'd be a good episode." So, mate, I've been buzzing all morning. But look, we obviously talked about your podcast. Obviously, I'm doing my podcast. We talk about, the first topic we were going to touch on was personal branding, right? I've always been a huge proponent for personal branding, but what you do on LinkedIn is really, really good. And I think we got in touch with each other. I think, was it an ADHD post I done or something?
Possibly, mate. Yeah, I think so. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I'd done an ADHD post and then you done one, and we'd never spoken before. And then you just done a post like the next day and just tagged me at the bottom saying inspiration from Charles. And then I saw you were starting the podcast and stuff like that. But, let's just break it down really, really simply. I mean, from your perspective, why don't you just actually tell us then how you've kind of built your brand, what the process was behind that?
I'll be honest, I get asked this question a bit, and I don't think there's like a one but fits all strategy. How I built my brand. So when I started recruitment, obviously I was a trainee in Rec to Rec, which is it's an industry which has a lot of push factors. People will say what they want to say, but ultimately there's a lot of bad Rec to Recs out there, which makes my job better. And I think I had this sort of sole purpose really to sort of be known for someone who's quite approachable. Rec to Rec, my industry, I recruit recruiters. So my clients and candidates are all recruiters, right? They're all on LinkedIn. Okay. So that was my number one target really, to sort of build a following on LinkedIn, or as I like to say, a community. I think starting off, I sort of had to identify what made me unique. Sort of overthought that a lot, Charles, coming up with, all these unique selling points about myself. And actually, when I just sort of stripped things back a bit, I come to the sole purpose that it was just about me and who I am, and sort of leaning on that, credibility, trust, and sort of showing the value I can offer. But it's about, I suppose, spot checking really what makes you unique, on a brand perspective, and then just sort of living your brand every day. So I suppose to dive a bit more into that, obviously, the generic posting is a big thing, but it's about what you post and who your target audience is. What you just mentioned there, Charles, was that we originally got in conversation because I literally posted and then pretty much said, at Charles, I got this inspiration from you. So already I was sort of inviting you to me, and we've now built a relationship from that. I think your network is your net worth. Everyone knows that. So what I did was quite early on is identify the leaders in the space on a personal branding perspective, whether they're recruitment consultants or just like, let's use Hisham, for example. He's got a very well-known podcast, runs Hector, which I think you've been involved in. And I think from what he was saying at the time was that he had the number one global recruitment podcast in terms of numbers and views. I've been to numerous in-person podcasts, live podcasts and events with him. And he didn't have a clue who I was, but I made sure I went up to him and met him, and basically just told him, I'm going to do a podcast and you're going to come on it, and because you come on it, I'm going to basically sort of leverage off your following. So again, it's sort of just like not using and abusing, but almost just like just sort of like collaborating with people who are already at that status. They sort of say fake it till you make it, but I definitely did that, and grew quite a following. So yeah,
I was going to say just on that actually, because you raise an interesting point, because just before we started recording, I mentioned to you that obviously I had Leisha on the podcast, and she's got one of probably the top 3, top 5 recruitment podcasts out there. She's like nearly done 250 episodes on her podcast, and she was saying a lot of young people that this is the weird thing. A lot of younger people don't really necessarily like making phone calls, but then they don't want to post on LinkedIn as well. It's quite an interesting thing. And I always get asked, like, but I posted on LinkedIn a few times and I've got nothing from it. You're not always going to get a job from a LinkedIn post. You're not always going to get a candidate apply to your to some jobs because you've posted on LinkedIn about your holiday or something like that. It's about building a brand, living who you are, and creating a bit of a reputation. And then something I was going to mention to you just a second ago after you said about what you've done there with Hisham. Obviously, I was involved with Hector when it was called the Recruitment Mentors platform. I'd done a bit of training for him under the mindset piece. When I set my coaching business up, what do you think the first thing was that I done? I looked at every other mentor for Hector or Recruitment Mentors back then, reached out to them and said, hey, we're both mentors. We both know Hisham. We've both been on the podcast. Let's have a conversation. And most of my clients initially came from conversations because we both know that person. So as cliche as the whole your network is your net worth, you're absolutely right, mate.
Yeah. I think your branding goes beyond LinkedIn as well, which people don't realize. Obviously, it's a good starting point because it is ultimately a platform which everyone goes on to check out your profile, see your recommendations, see what you're posting, see who you are. But I think a brand is sort of what people imagine you by or what you're known by, and that can be just built through your credibility in your recruitment processes, your relationships that have been built. LinkedIn is just sort of the epicenter of that, and I suppose in today's digital world, like, and especially the competitive market of recruitment, you have to stand out, and just by posting jobs, that's not going to make you it's not going to make you stand out ultimately. So yeah.
So what about, I mean, you do a lot with grads, right?
I have done in the past, yeah. I mean, a lot of my focus so far this year, mate, has been more the senior principal end. It constantly changes in my market depending on clients' needs.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, people listening to this podcast right now, whether they're at graduate level or entry level, or whether they're principal, and maybe they haven't really gone properly deep into building a brand, building a personal brand, and posting on LinkedIn, and going to events and networking and things like that. What would you say are a couple of real big tips from your experience to help those people?
So I'll give you 5. I think first one's understanding, like we said before, and identifying your unique touch or your unique value. To do that, you've got to sort of think about what sets you apart. Like, it's your expertise at the end of the day, whatever market you're in, whatever specialism you're in. Focus on content that provides value for that. What's your approach as well? Like, these are questions that I'm asking, I suppose, the viewer now. What's your approach and what's your personality? Like, don't try and be someone you're not. And that's your core brand ultimately. I think number 2 would be just being authentic, which sort of ties into personality. Don't change something that doesn't need changing. You are you, and people buy into people. I think your brand should definitely reflect who you are as a person, because like I said, authenticity builds trust, right? And human touch, human connection. We talked briefly then about it being a digital world, but the whole point of a brand is to make that digital seem human-like almost. I suppose then it's like using social media again, beyond LinkedIn. I don't know if, I hate TikTok myself. I hate Instagram, but I suppose it could be a good place to network, speak to other entrepreneurs. I've been doing it a lot recently of other startup businesses, whether they're not even in my space or not. It's just about, again, just bouncing ideas off each other. Quite a powerful tool, really, social media. I suppose using that then as well, you just need to share content which aligns and engages the just the person you're identifying, trying to either headhunt or just build that community of. That's what everything needs to be. You need to put yourself in the eyes of them. What do they want to see from you? Again, you talked then about not someone young who's potentially not gone to networking events. So that's a big mistake, in my opinion. Like even if you're shy, just being there and listening to public speakers and, just being around people who are in your space actually gets you embedded into your particular market as well. So network and collaborate is a big thing, which again is offline completely. Like that's not a digital age. That's like old school, going to meet people in person. It doesn't have to be a client booking meeting. It can just be going to these events and surround yourself with people in your industry, and it'll expand your reach as well. Like you said, you can go and just do something that's just like super, super rememberable, and they're gonna remember you, aren't they? Ultimately, so whether it's just hi, I'm Callum, or it's your tie's so cool. Like, where'd you get it from? And it's just like, again, just being just unique and yourself really. And then the last one I'd say is be patient and persistent. Like when I started. I'm quite an impatient person anyway, but being patient on building a brand, it does take time. It doesn't come quickly. You've got to really put a lot of time into it, stay consistent, and keep refining your approach as well as your brand grows. Like I look at impressions of what posts are doing well, engagements, what typical comments are working. So that's probably a couple tips there.
Yeah, no, those are awesome tips. You've just actually triggered a memory in my brain when you said about like complimenting someone's tie. And this is actually quite an interesting one for recruiters because it ties into your last point as well about patience, right? So I was one of the first people in my old business to be very active on LinkedIn, and I used to bug people because I knew how to kind of trick the algorithm. So if I got everyone in the office to like my post and everyone done the same market, the reach of that post would go mental, right? So anyway, I'd done loads on social media, and I went to a colorectal surgical event. So just think about that for a second. Colorectal surgery. Yeah. So colorectal surgery is everything to do with your backside, right? And then your colon and stuff. So every single stand had products that were to do with your backside. Yeah, I'm trying to put it in like non-gross terms. It's minging, mate. It was not very pleasant at all. But there was this company that I've been trying to target, but the guy was the VP of sales and marketing, and the company was based out in China. So he was in China once a quarter and in a different country every week. So trying to get that geezer on the phone was just almost impossible. I'd seen he'd commented and liked some of my posts on LinkedIn, but never answered the phone. See the guy at the stand with his one of the other directors, literally just walked up, looked at the products, like that. Okay, cool. Looks fantastic. The guy was like, "Oh, hi, mate. Can I give you a hand?" And I was just like, "Wow, that is an absolutely stunning tie. Is that handmade?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "Is that Charles Tyrrell?" And he went, "No, it's just M&S, man." I was like, "No way. I collect ties. This one's a Charles Tyrrell one. This is handmade as well." But I'm Charles, by the way. We just started speaking about suits and ties, and then he was like, "Sorry, mate. What is it you do?" And I was like, "I'm a surgical sales specialist in the recruitment field. Yeah, I recruit people for companies like." Yeah. I've had that as well. I have had that. But guess what? When you're at an exhibition, if they say no, "Oh, you've got no customers with you here. You have time to speak to me." And guess what? 9 times out of 10, they go, but yeah, no, that was quite a funny story. But yeah, okay, cool. So what about for people that and I guess you've kind of mentioned or mentioned this a little bit, but what about someone that's listening right now that goes, "Okay, cool. So I've got an understanding of who I am in terms of my personality. I do this particular market and I have a bit of an understanding of what candidates and clients would want in my market. I've put together like a PDF that I could probably share on LinkedIn about this for recruiters that struggle with posting ideas. But what would you say, aside from hot jobs of the week or hot candidate of the week, what would be like 3 posts that you would say, like, you can kind of do that and then vary it up?
You have to sort of, I mean, what I do, mate, I like to think I follow a system, but I definitely don't. But I think there should be a personal post, and I've never been. I mean, I'm quite personal on LinkedIn anyway, but I think you do sort of have to. I'm not talking about I've been on a walk this week, or or here's what this taught me about recruitment or whatever, but just something which is like, and I literally just scrolled down like a year's worth of posts and just generating ideas, because there is no point reinventing the wheel. It's more about making it your own with your own personal touch. So the copycat phase is definitely a big thing. But when it comes to ideas, like, honestly, just Google's your best friend. Chat GBT as well. Like, you can just generate loads of ideas off posts from there. But again, it just has to be super relevant. Like, you don't want to just go off on a tangent. It has to be, relevant to your content audience, the people that you're reaching out to or trying to, your market. And witty, funny, humorous things work a lot for me. Like, I know it's always not the most professional, but memes and just silly pictures, or just like, photoshopping your face onto chessboard or something I did the other day, which did pretty well. And it does work though. You do get, it does make you stand out. Like you said, I've had clients who say, "Oh, I've seen that post, that was quite funny," or candidates message you about it. So yeah, I think just a starting point is just copy someone that you like the look of, and almost use the bulk of their posts that do well and just have your own twist on it.
Yeah, nice. No, that's really good advice. Something that kind of, it isn't really me, and I wanted to ask you this actually, but something that works really well, surprisingly. If I offer value on LinkedIn, I don't get that many impressions or engagement. But when I speak to people that have seen it, I've got two things, and you can get back on this. People will go, I've got one guy that just tags me in all of his posts saying that I always follow this guy for business development tips. The ones that work for me, mate, and I wanted to ask you about this, are like the controversial posts. Like, I done a post, I think it was in July, about why recruiters in 2024 are just bang average. And it was basically just slagging off 2024 recruiters, and it got like 150,000 impressions.
But did you ask the question why? Because that's what I was about to say. Sometimes when you ask for advice, you'll get money. If you ask for money, you'll get advice. And that's a little bit off topic, but I know what you're saying. I see a lot of people that go, "This is what I know. This is my advice." But actually, using the audience, you want to create a community in the comments of people answering your question. Like, you can say, "I'm wondering why this is happening," and then tag people that who might have an answer, and get them to to tag each other in the comments, and you sort of create a community. That's where probably most of my posts have done well, by leveraging off a question, whether that's me then giving my opinion and then asking what people think. That can be controversial or not. That's a really good way to boost engagements. Alex Dick did it before. I don't know what it was. I did reply to it, so I should know what it was. But he just made a post, a video, and then basically tagged me and said, "I think I know something about this," and then I just put something that I knew about it. But again, I wouldn't have seen that post, to be fair, if Alex wouldn't have tagged me, and I wouldn't have commented, which probably would boost his reach. And it's just about just making people communicate, really, leveraging off questions.
I think that's a really, really good point, actually. And it's something that probably I'm a bit unconscious about, because I don't have a copywriter. I don't have a marketing team. I've just literally, I do everything by myself. And, I do look through my posts to track which ones work and stuff like that. But I think for anyone listening that is either just doing LinkedIn or starting doing the posts on LinkedIn, definitely leverage questions, tag in different people within the market and things like that is really, really good. But look, the second topic, I'm excited to talk about this, because this is probably one of my best skills within recruitment and business, is relationship building. I remember when I done my first proper job in recruitment, I'd done nursing recruitment for 2 years. And I said this to Leisha last week. Like, he gave me two nuggets. Firstly, he said, if you want to be successful in this game, you've really got to want it. And if you don't want it, get out. It's too hard of a job to not want this job. You need to really, really want it. And the other thing he said was, it sounds a bit gimpy, but he was like, "Mate, you've got almost like a gift. You build relationships better than anyone I've seen in this industry. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. Use it." And when I got into perm recruitment, I had that empowering belief, and I've obviously put that into practice, created really, really good habits of just really focusing on relationships. And you and I have spoken a little bit about this, and you do a fantastic job of this, right? I wanted to ask you but actually, let's go simple question. Firstly, because some people, especially like the sales influencers, are like, oh, relationships aren't everything. In recruitment, I'm sorry, they are. Why do you think in recruitment relationships are so important?
Because recruitment is a human capital asset business ultimately, isn't it? It's not like we're selling people. It's like legal human trafficking in a way. And I think, yeah, again, that human touch in a digital world is difficult. So having a genuine relationship with someone, whether it's a client or a candidate, will enhance trust and bring you closer to the money. So that's the importance of it. But if your question is why I think it's important, it's because it's always been important. Recruitment has been reinvented and changed. Alicia, who you just mentioned, who was on, will know that she's been in the market for a long time. And she has seen it go from, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but old phones,
Fax machines.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, I don't even know what that is, mate, if I'm honest with you. But that's don't want to call it a dinosaur age, but times have changed since then. Very similar to my father, who was in this industry. Things have changed since then. But the one thing which hasn't changed and never will is that relationships is the number one thing in recruitment or any sort of trust building, line of work. Like you're going to have a trusting relationship with a partner. So that's my thoughts on that, mate.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And I always used to say to candidates when I qualified them for some jobs, or whether I didn't have a live job but wanted to take them to market, that look, this is going to be a very intimate relationship. If I have jobs on my desk right now, we are going to be speaking multiple times a day for 2-3 weeks, potentially, depending on how quick I can get you a job. And it depends on the market. Same with the client. If I'm recruiting people like you recruit recruiters for people, they're doing interviews most days a week. You're calling that client, getting feedback and things like that. If you're just purely transactional and just business, and don't get me wrong, some clients are like that. I've worked with some people that it's all business. They don't give a fuck, right? But largely, you can end up being friends with a lot of your candidates and clients. I've been out to golf clubs with clients. I've been out for drinks with clients. I've been invited to weddings and things like that. I think it's so important because you spoke about this at the start, right? Recruitment these days is so saturated. There's so many people doing it. And I think the old fashioned way of training recruiters is to see every human, like a candidate and a client, as just a dollar sign or a pound sign. And I think if you look a little bit further and see them as a human being, yes, you have to be commercial. I get that. But if you see them as a human and focus on building that relationship and building that trust, I think you'll just get a lot further than many other recruiters.
Yeah, I think it's, just, I suppose, not to spin on its head, but there is a conflict there, like, play devil's advocate. I think sometimes, like you mentioned, there's specific clients who actually just want business. They don't want to build a relationship. But ultimately, I think when you actually do then sink your teeth into them people, they're the best ones. I've had relationships that are just clicked like that with clients, right? But then I look at how much business I've done with them to ones that have took longer to build the relationship with. Sometimes the latter is more financially feasible. And why I say that is because sometimes it has to work hand in hand. It's all good having, being really charismatic and, really building a relationship with someone, being a mate. But if you're still not delivering and you're still not showing them what you can do in a business perspective, then it sort of doesn't work hand in hand. It sort of needs to work parallel to each other. So I suppose, a recent story is a client that was very difficult really to build a relationship with. And I hate it, because it's like, I just want to have a chat about, I want to know what you're up to at the weekend. And he just wasn't having it, like he's so cold. And I thought he hated me. Probably did, probably still does. And then you obviously execute on the brief in a timely manner. And now we're in the process of winning a retained project with that said individual. And then now we're going down to London to meet them next week for drinks. That will be the next stage of the relationship building.
Yeah,
so
nice.
I had to sort of prove my worth before he could sort of open his arms in a way, sort of had a wall built up. And sometimes, it is all well and good just going, it's all about relationships. But at the same time, you do have to complement that with your service.
Yeah, you need to be commercial, right? You need to have a commercial acumen, because, like you said, if you've got a client that's always willing to speak to you and you're spending half an hour every morning chatting to them about football over the weekend, what they're going to do on the with their family, blah 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 blah, but then you're not doing any business with them. Like, I'm sorry, but you're ultimately your sole purpose in recruitment is to do deals. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that is the main thing that keeps the lights on, is doing deals. But yeah, I think ultimately though, if you've got like a real solid relationship with someone, if you've got trust, and if it has been like a client that has been difficult to break into, it's like dating, right? If you're single and you're dating someone and you meet them for the first time and immediately it's just like love at first sight, and then just sometimes some people get a little bit put off by that. They like a little bit of the chase and stuff, and they like someone that has kind of put up a bit of a guard initially, because they're not easy, basically. And if you've got a client that was so easy to build that relationship with in the first instance, either you're absolutely amazing at your job, or they might just do that with every recruiter. And sometimes you get exclusivity with that client, and turns out they actually got another couple of agencies on exclusive as well. So you just have to be a bit commercial with it, is all I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just need to look at clients as partners, not clients. You want to be an additional leg or arm to that business. And to do that, you have to prove your worth. But again, leveraging off your personal touch is really important.
Yeah. That's I want to piggyback off of that point. Actually, you mentioned there about being like an extension of their brand, like another arm of their business. That's something that I used to use when I would pitch to clients, because I'd predominantly done retained search for the last few years of my recruitment sales part of my career. And I always used to say to them that, you can go and spend tens of thousands for a branding agency to come and do your videos and do your website and stuff, and they're essentially an extension of your brand. That's exactly how I work. So when you're explaining that to clients, and when you're trying to build that relationship, you spoke a lot in the start about identifying who you are, what your values are, what your personal unique selling points are, not necessarily just the business unique selling points. What did you and what do you currently do differently to really build solid, great relationships with clients?
It's not about filling the role; it's about finding the right fit. And finding the right fit for me has two different avenues, let's call it. One is on paper and one is in person. Someone can look perfect on paper, but they might not be the right fit culturally, let's say, or vice versa. And it's about active listening, asking the right questions, angling the right questions to, I suppose, build a case study. I call it an avatar based on this exact profile that they want, and letting them know that I really understand what this person looks like. Potentially using case studies from previous work that I've done, showing them delivery times, X, Y, Z, and just being transparent. Sometimes saying no is a big thing. If it is out of your remit, then you can sort of let them down rather than just bringing business on for no reason. But the success I've had is just from active listening and constant communication. WhatsApp is one of the main points I believe to be, again, in a digital age, emails are great as a formal, I suppose, profession. But then again, moving on to that, then personal human touch, just WhatsApp messages are great. Obviously, opposed to phone calls, but not everyone has time to pick up the phone, right? So it's just constantly keeping people in the loop, and just showcasing your value through past experience. And if you've not got any past experience, you do just have to put your neck on the line and go, look, at the end of the day, like if this is what you're looking for, these are our terms. Yeah, they might be higher than usual, but ultimately you don't have to pay until you like the person. So let me prove my value. And there's probably going off on a tangent there, but I don't know if I answered your question a bit.
Yeah, no, I like a lot of what you've just said there. I think for me, one of the key things for building relationships, and I've run this in all my business development and candidate training, just general recruitment training, is to build rapport with someone, to remove that resistance. The key thing about building rapport is finding common ground. Now, you gave us an example earlier about that client who that you're going to be meeting in London soon, but initially you thought, oh, he doesn't like me, etc., etc. sometimes people's personality profiles, especially founders and managing directors, they're very, what we would say, like, you've got red, yellow, green and blue personalities. They're very red, so they're dominant and just very direct. Sometimes they're not necessarily being rude, and sometimes they don't want to speak about their weekend. They don't want to talk about where they went on Monday night, whatever. So it's about just finding common ground and asking some key questions, active listening, and showing interest in their interests. And eventually, like most human beings, I'll put my neck on the line and say probably 90+% human beings like talking about themselves or about interests that interest them. So if you can get someone talking about that, even if it is someone that's hyper direct and just like not interested, if you just talk about their business and talk about their growth plans and that's what they're passionate about, and you mirror certain parts of their language, active listening, show some empathy, you will build really good rapport. And if you build that first layer of rapport, I always explain it to people like building a house. Have to do the foundations first. The foundations is the rapport. Once you've built that rapport, then you can start doing the walls of the relationship, and then offering like a no placement, no fee, and all that type of stuff. So I'm going off on a tangent as well.
You've hit the nail on the head, mate. Sometimes to break your, get your foot in the door, you do have to give something before it's given back. That could be a potential free fee at times, or it could be just some really relevant market insight about a competitor. And to the individuals that you're talking about there who are quite business orientated, very commercial, don't really want anything to do with relationships, that's what you leverage off. It's more about, this is what I know about the market. I know that you've just hired this candidate. He came from that background. I actually spoke to him in the past. Is this still, not to like put them off that person, but to let them know something that it's happened before, right? So I get so many candidates reach out, right? I put polls out and candidates will apply. Yes, I'm happy where I am. I want out, or, I could look if you put something pleasant in front of me. And I've had candidates reach out, or click the poll, and then, oh, they work with one of my clients, or they work with one of my prospective clients that I'm trying to bring on. Do I either approach that candidate and bring them to market and place them elsewhere, or I can actually see value in doing business with who they work for? I can then go to that person and go, just to let you know, this person, and I'm just saying this because I want to work with you in a partnership and to show my trust, this person has voted and said they're unhappy. Now you are aware of that, you can do something with that. And then 9 times out of 10, they can either then go, I had a conversation internally, we are on not a mutual ground, I am going to let them go, or they are going to leave, here's the details, you can place them, or thanks for letting us know, we've spot checked the problem, it's now been solved, thanks for that, let's do business. And it's just being a good Samaritan.
Yeah, nice. That's an interesting approach though. Have you ever had an instance where you've done that and the candidate has been pissed off that you've told their boss that they were unhappy where they are?
Yes and no, really. But you just got to, I suppose in business, you've got to make smart moves. And as a business owner, I've got to identify, I suppose where my loyalty lies. Like if I am in clear communication with a client, we're almost at the end point of signing terms, I would never do it if it's just a business I've never spoke to and it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna throw you in the mud, because I would just place that person. But it's all dependent on I suppose who that person is who's applied. If I do think I can place them elsewhere, sometimes I've done both, but again, I've been transparent. I've actually just placed the person that's left your business. I now know there's a role to fill and I backfill it. And it's just not being a bullshitter or a cowboy. Like in my market, there's so many of them. Some of them would even do it with a signed client that, that's going against the the terms of business that you have in place, right? But yeah,
mate, the last thing I'll say on that is if one of your values, business and personal values, is transparency, you're already like setting yourself miles apart from most recruiters. I love recruitment. I love the industry. I love a lot of people within this industry, but there are still so many cowboys and so many people that have no values. They aren't honest. They aren't transparent. They aren't professional. And if we want to change the perception of this industry, we need more people like yourself, mate, where you are transparent and you say it how it is and you're honest, because I think those values go a very long way in pretty much every type of business. And it's just astonishing how there's not enough of those people with those values in this industry.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree.
So the last topic before we move on to our final question, you mentioned that you get a lot of obviously candidates coming to you, but you have quite some unique outreaching and headhunting methods. I'm always interested to learn about this from different people, because putting my hands up, I was never the best at finding candidates, but I would probably put my hand up and say once I had a candidate in front of me, I was probably the best at qualifying them, finding out every bit of information I needed to, and building a relationship. I was amazing at that. But doing a LinkedIn project, and you and I have spoken about the ADHD, pre-medicated Charles trying to do a LinkedIn project and things like that. It was brutal, mate. It was brutal. But talk to me about your unique outreaching methods and how you sort of headhunt candidates and things like that.
Talking about the client I'm about to get retained with as well, they asked me that question, what do you do for outreach? And I just flipped it on the head and said, what do you do? Because they've obviously been trying to internally recruit at the moment, and sending emails is like, what is the bulk of that message? And this is the role. And ultimately, if I'm a candidate, right, and I'm working in a job and I get a message and it's like, this is the role, take it or leave it, I've got everything I need to know. Why do I need to jump on a call? You want to get people on the phone to, again, build that relationship like we've just discussed. And to do that, you need to stem curiosity. So something short and sweet, like, hi, Charles, really keen to get your opinion on a few things. Or, hi, Charles, notice you've just been recently promoted. Just got something I want to fly, we've run by you. And it's sort of like, yeah, they might know what you're trying to do, but 9 times out of 10 it actually works. Obviously, you've got to follow up and follow through is sort of what most of my successes came from. But the whole just personalization of the message and just standing out with not a formal hi, how are you? I don't know, just like I
know what you mean.
Yeah, I just sort of try and make the bulk of the message just super, super personal, and stem curiosity, because then as soon as I get them on the phone, that's when the magic happens. And, sometimes it's never a now thing as well, but, I've got a list of candidates who I follow up with every month because they tell me to. Feel free to check in again next month, and I do.
Mm-hmm.
I always do as I say, and then eventually they do know they have one bad day, they know where to come to. So it is just about, again, just standing out from what everyone else is doing. Cold calls are great, right? But not everyone likes it. If you've got someone's number, definitely call them. But when they're in work, they're going to be like, I'm in work, or the boss is there, so they'll be like, fuck off. And it's just about that follow up again on WhatsApp.
Yeah. Especially for you, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but you're dealing with recruiters, and a lot of recruiters, I mean, I know since COVID, obviously there is the ability to work from home and stuff, but largely people are in the office. And if I got a call, and I've actually had Rec to Recs call the office line under a different name, and then as soon as I answer, they go, Charles, hey, yeah, this is Callum actually calling from Equninimity, and I'm like, you're calling, my boss is literally right next to me. That for me is like, well, for your market, it must be difficult to cold call candidates.
It is, and that's what I mean. You need to just like find a middle ground of being not too invasive. Ultimately, I always say, look, you know what I do. We do the same job, right? We're all recruiters. But there are times when you're going to be, frowned upon. But ultimately, that it is about your approach, and I always use a soft approach, which I never used to. It always used to be quite aggressive, cold call, try and sell a role straight away. I'm just missing that whole, putting myself on your radar. Like, a big thing for me as well is just like making sure that these people know who I am as well. Like, I will comment. I literally have like a stalker process. Like, Charles, if I want you, mate, I will literally like every post over the next week. I will comment on your posts. I'll even like fucking you walk past your house. I won't, but I make sure that you're aware of who I am. I'll even then start posting about the market that you're in, or maybe relevant roles which I have, before I ever approach yourself, so that that person who I'm approaching knows who I am. They know the value I can add. They're more reluctant to have a call, and it does work. But again, it takes time. You've got to play around with different methods, and ultimately, again, individuals are all different on their traits and I suppose how they like to be approached. Like, one of my follow-ups that I didn't think worked very well worked really well for a few, and it was just simply like I had no response, and it was Mr. Busy, did you see my message? And then
Mhm.
one of them was like, well, that's not very professional. And the other one's like, haha, love it. Yeah, here's my number.
Yeah.
And it's again just like, it's just trial and error, or test and learn, as I like to say.
Yeah. Yeah, not one technique is going to work for everyone, and that's something that some people need to kind of cement in their brain, because if you want to try and please everyone, there is a quote somewhere about this, but yeah, if you try and please everybody, you're not going to go anywhere. You need to kind of, like what you've just said there, Callum, figure out what your type of approach is, and if it works for some people, great. If it doesn't work for some people, great. You can't win every single client. I mean, for example, we're not going to name names, but you and I obviously share different businesses to reach out to, me for a training perspective, you for Rec to Rec. Remember, you put me in touch with one company at the start of the year. I've done loads of business with them. Brilliant. The other company you put me in touch with, similar sort of market, I messaged him on LinkedIn after connecting and said, we're not interested. And I waited 2 days. I thought 2 days is enough time. Like, look, I'll just give the guy a call and just build a relationship. If he's not looking for any training coaching now, it's fine. And I got an absolute bollocking on the phone. Like, how dare you? You cold call me. I said to you that. Meanwhile, one of my best clients to date said to me 6 times, we don't need coaching, we don't need training, we have an online platform, we had another trainer come in. I was so fucking persistent with them. I ended up going in, doing a free session, and he was like, I love the persistence. I know now I can trust you to teach my guys to do BD because I've battered you down 6 times and you're here. So
Yeah.
I'm just sticking to who I am. I didn't do anything completely unprofessional. And like you said, Mr. Busy, it's not exactly the most unprofessional thing in the world, is it?
No, but I think just to dive deeper into the outreach and headhunting, like you were talking about projects. Projects are really important. You need to build a talent pool of relevant candidates that are right for the role that you're working on. And then from there, you're probably only going to have 10% really of face value of who is relevant, because not everyone has every single thing they do on their LinkedIn. Your candidates are your eyes and your ears in the market. So you need to have meaningful conversations. You need to gauge referrals. They will point you in the right direction. Like I said, it's constant. It's sort of like sometimes dragging yourself through glass, but staying consistent and almost giving yourself daily tasks of even just having one meaningful conversation that points you to another candidate. And as you go around, you'll find the right person. And as you're doing that as well, you're getting yourself on these people's radar, you're building relationships with them, they come back to you in the near future. But then I suppose with the outreaching and the headhunting, the important thing is then once you actually get them onto a call that they're interested in, they want to know about the role. It's not about telling them about the role, it's about the story again. You need to pitch in the business story, the company team, the impact it could have, finding out their pain points and just reverse engineering it and offering constantly a solution to their problem. And that does take time. In today's market, in a candidate driven market, you have to be consultative. And a consultant in any shape or form is thorough with what they do. You can't be aggressive, you can't be a bully. You really do have to ultimately make sure that you are working their way as well. And you'll do well if you just stay consistent and sort of follow them steps, really, in my opinion.
Yeah. It goes back to what you said earlier, mate. It's a partnership at the end of the day. And one of my clients said to me about it, he called the analogy the value seesaw. And he said, initially on a cold call or, a booked discovery call, you're giving way more value to the client about their competitors, about the market, about, giving them advice on their interview process and digging into the pain points and showing empathy by explaining other companies have gone for a similar thing. But largely, if you're doing that, not always does the client then give you the value back. So eventually what you need to do is use your good open questions and really dig into certain things to understand, like you said, about their pain points. And then you get value from them. And all of a sudden, you're a partnership and you should be level. And I always teach recruiters when I do training about Winston Churchill had a quote about how he loves pigs because pigs see us as equal. Cats look down at us, dogs look up at us. And a lot of trainee recruiters are little puppies. They look at clients and go, oh, Mr. Client. A lot of senior or a lot of their clients sometimes feel like they're a cat. They look down at the recruiter and say, I don't need you. Really, we're just pigs. We're all equal. We're just human beings, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that's another lesson to people listening as well, especially if you're new to the industry. If you look at a client or a senior candidate as a senior person, as a CEO, as a VP, you're losing. You just need to see them as another human being. And that's all I'll say on that, because I'll go on a tangent about that for a very long time.
No, I like that, mate. Love pigs. I like it. I like it.
All right, mate. So last question I always finish up with is, at the end of this episode, from your perspective, what can people do to be 1% better off in recruitment?
What you just said there, mate. Pigs. I think that's a really, really good point. I'm not even taking the mickey there. I think it sort of opened my eyes up a little bit as well, because I think regardless of what we've just discussed, a lot of recruiters sort of feel like they're the finished article. With the ever-changing market, how things change on a process perspective, economics perspective. That's me. Yeah. And I feel like there's just an unwavering amount of people who just are sort of stood on this pedestal and believe they are the finished product. You have to be learning every single day, every conversation, take something from it. And I think, being that 1% better is actually looking at everyone as level to you, but also someone who has value. Because if you're looking up at people, like you said, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be, you're not going to get what you want. You need to sort of go in at a middle ground, prove your value, and take what you can. But I think the big thing is really, I like it a lot. I'm going to use that. I like it a lot.
Steal it, mate. Honestly, it's not really actually mine, but I just use it in all my training now. The first time I ever heard it, I thought that was a really, really bizarre thing. One of the co-CEOs was like, "We need to be selling like pigs." I was like, "You're having a laugh, aren't you? Like selling like a pig? What the hell does that even mean?"
What would you say? What would you say people could take away? Because it's about today's podcast that people. Is that your question?
Yeah. So from the end of this show, what can people take away to be 1% better off? I mean, obviously, seeing people as equal. I think from what you've said today, and look, this is so many people say this, but I think not enough people at the end of the day. I think, and I've done a video about this yesterday, actually, really do a bit of not soul searching. I guess it is soul searching, but really try and understand who you are. What are your personal unique selling points? When I first decided I was going to do this podcast, a guy called Paul Church, bit of a shout out, he said to me, he's like, what actually sets you apart? Like, why would people listen to you in comparison to the other recruitment podcasts? And I said, well, I've got just endless amounts of energy. I'm like a 10 out of 10 passion. If I'm passionate about something, people can see the passion, and I genuinely care. I really care about the industry. I really care about coaching people, and my business, my website says coaching recruiters to be 1% better every day. Hence why I named the podcast this. So I know if those are my three things that set me apart, because I know those are my 10-10 personality traits, then that's what sets me apart. And then my values go into that of the professionalism, the honesty, the transparency. So I think to be 1% better after this, and things I've taken from you, is really understand what sets you apart. What are your values? What are your unique selling points? And build that into your content, and just be fucking consistent with it. Because so many people, they get on LinkedIn, they'll do a post about, they got a puppy or they've gone on holiday or something, and then they don't get much from it. And then they just revert to the boring old hot jobs of the week. I'm hiring for these roles that only 5% of your network actually cares about. But I could go on an absolute tangent, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Play to your strengths is a big thing. Like what you just said there, you've got all the energy, all the charisma. I'm dyslexic, mate. Sometimes I fucking twist up words like I was trying to pronounce that one before. Sometimes if I send an email, it's far from formal, but the number one thing I can do is build a genuine relationship with someone, because what you see is what you get. People know that. And it's about leveraging off that. Your unique touch is you as a person, and that will complement someone relevant. I think another thing to take away is, I said something before about when you're working with a client on a role, it's not about filling the role, it's about finding a fit. Quite like that. And I wrote it down actually, because as I said it, I thought that sounded good, but it makes sense as well. And that's something that I do without knowing. And it's about being sort of self-aware as well of what you do and spot checking your the things you might not be necessarily good at, and just learning. Like I said, to be 1% better, you need to actually be an open book and want to learn, be obsessed, like you mentioned, passionate about everything, and you'll do well.
Yeah, 100%. The final thing I will say on that, you've just reminded me actually, one of my clients I work with in the city, I have drilled into the recruiters so much so that when I prep them for their job qualification calls, I say, if you come back without interview slots or a meeting book to run through the process in 2 days, don't fucking speak to me. And last Thursday, one of the recruiters came back and he was like, yeah, so we had a really, really good call. And I went, stop. Interview slots, book date in the diary to catch up on the process. He was like, yep, showed me his laptop and he had it booked in the diary. I was like, go on, mate. But the thing that makes you 1% better when especially when you're taking on a job brief with a client, right, and talking about what you just said there about making sure you find the right fit, not just placing a candidate. My old sales director, Liam, used to teach us this, and now I'm teaching people this. Once you take a job spec on from a client, say, I'm not going to send you any CVs, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to catch up with you in 48 hours. And in that 48 hours, we'll jump on a video call and I'm going to run you through everything I've done so far. Anyone that I've spoken to that I think could be relevant, I'll talk you through their profile. Anyone that I want to submit, I'll talk you through their profile. And anyone I've qualified that I don't think is a good fit, I'm going to show you their profile. And what you then do on that video call is you jump on and you go, cool. So my LinkedIn project, I got 50 candidates. My CRM shortlist, I've got 25 candidates. I've spoken to 20 people. Out of the 20, I think 3 are relevant, but these other 3, I didn't know if they're that relevant, but I wanted to show you profiles. And guess what? When you do that, your CV to interview ratio goes from like maybe 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 to 1:1. And what typically happens, and I've actually first-hand experienced this, is the client turns around and goes, oh, that Callum candidate looks quite good. Why didn't you submit him? Well, on paper, he's good. But when I spoke to him, I didn't know whether he'd be the best personality fit or culture fit. But I wanted to show the profile before making my decision. Do you know what? Let me have a conversation with him and I'll take that into consideration. And at least that way you're being honest and you're being transparent. And if they interview that person and go, do you know what? You were probably right. They weren't really the right culture fit. Then the trust builds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's for me is an absolute game changer for recruiters for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Do the same, mate, with weekly forecasts. Like when we're working exclusive work, like we will just build a database of candidates which could be a right fit, and it's sort of broke into different tabs. Like this is a perfect fit culturally and on paper. This is someone who might be a bit too inexperienced, or the personality might not be aligned with your core values, or this person is a bit of a shot in the dark, and it's sort of breaking it down for them and then constantly changing as well, and just letting them have visibility on that rather than, the old school way again of just like specking in everyone that you get. It's sort of like a database people can join and add and have visibility on. But yeah, there's lots really that we could continue to talk about. I'm just gutted I couldn't pronounce that word and I'm scared to say it again. Like it's on my mind just now. I'm like, fuck, can't believe it. Ruined it.
No, mate, I've been there many times before where you're just sat there and you're like, yeah, you just have to move past it. It's fine.
There we go. Honestly, I was fucking sat here and then I was trying to think of the word dyslexic and I've had to Google it and I've gone, there it is. And I'm like, fuck me. But this is it. What you see is what you get, mate. And that's how I am. And I think that's where my success has come from. Ultimately, to conclude everything we talked about, my success has just been being me. I'm not anyone else but myself. And my branding has shown that. My business has shown that. And my relationships have shown that. I'm here today because we've built a relationship, right? You've given me clients, I've done business, vice versa. So people watching, they can take a leaf out of that book. And there you go.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Look, I've known you for a couple of years now and you've always been the same, but you've grown. And you've known me for a few years. I'm always the same person, but I've grown. We're always going to change. We're always going to take snippets from other people. Like I've actually taken things away from this podcast that I'm going to implement into my social branding strategy and all the rest of it. And hopefully people take things away from this that are going to, like I say, make them 1% better. You're always going to take things from people, but just be true to who you are. And I think that is just a solid note to end it on, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Charles. All right. You enjoy the rest of your day, mate. Speak soon.
Where can people reach out to you, by the way? LinkedIn, I'm assuming, right? Is that
LinkedIn,
the main place?
Yeah. Give me a call. It's all over my LinkedIn, emails. Any recruiters wanting a new job, let me know.
Fantastic. Nice one. Thank you very much, mate.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.